Have you ever felt that sting of being completely and totally misunderstood? You know, where something fundamental about you, like your independence, gets twisted and labeled as some kind of disorder? It is beyond frustrating. And today we're going to dive into the science behind why this happens and uncover what feels like a true betrayal of observation. And this just nails it, right? It's that feeling of someone looking right at you, seeing what you do, but coming to the exact opposite conclusion about why you're doing it. This isn't just a simple mix-up. It feels like a betrayal because it calls the very core of your personality into question.
All right, Section 1, the observer's betrayal. Let's talk about when flexibility gets mistaken for rigidity. So picture this. You're the kind of person who loves spontaneity, right? A friend calls with a last-minute plan for a road trip, and you're like, I'm in. But then, an observer sees your carefully planned routines, the things you do to enable that freedom, and they label you as inflexible. That's the betrayal in action. They see the what, but completely miss the why.
And this right here is the central conflict, the part that is so infuriating. Your actual life, your day-to-day reality, is all about saying sounds great to new experiences. But the clinical label that gets slapped on you uses this cold, pathological language, like an insistence on sameness. It's such a jarring contradiction, and it completely ignores the motivation behind your actions. So what is actually going on here? Okay, Section 2. Let's clear this up by defining the two very different profiles at the heart of all this confusion, the ultravert versus ASD rigidity. One is a personality type, and the other is a specific cognitive trait. They are not the same thing.
So first up, the otherovert. This is a handy term for someone who doesn't really fit the classic extrovert or introvert box. Their social compass just points other. It's not that they're against the group, they just don't have that built-in impulse to follow it. And this is crucial. It's not driven by social anxiety. It's just a genuine preference for independence, for marching to their own beat.
Now, on the other side of the coin, you have cognitive rigidity. This isn't a preference, it's a well-documented trait, a hallmark of autism spectrum disorder. We're talking about a genuine neurological difficulty in shifting from one way of thinking to another, what researchers call changing mental sets. It's about getting stuck on a rule or a routine, especially when you're under pressure.
And this is the absolute key. It all comes down to the why. An ultravert might meal prep every single Sunday. Why? For efficiency, to free up their week for whatever spontaneous thing comes their way. It's a chosen structure that actually creates flexibility. For someone with cognitive rigidity, that same routine might be a way to manage overwhelming anxiety. One is a tool for freedom, the other is a shield for survival.
So if the behaviors can look so similar on the surface, how in the world can we tell them apart? Well, it turns out there's one key ingredient, one social factor that blows the lid off the whole thing and reveals the totally different machinery working underneath.
So what is it? What's the secret ingredient you can add to the mix that causes these two profiles to react in completely opposite ways? The thing that finally exposes the difference between chosen independence and genuine cognitive rigidity?
The answer? It's this simple act of being watched. You know, the observer effect. The idea that people change their behavior when they know someone's looking. This isn't just some lab curiosity. It's happening all the time in real life. And it turns out how a person, especially a man, reacts to being observed is absolutely fundamental to their social strategy.
Okay, Section 4. This is where the science gets really interesting. We're going to look at two totally opposite reactions to being watched. For one person, it's a catalyst, sparking them into action. For the other, it's a cage, trapping them in place.
It really boils down to this. For the independent ultravert male, having an audience can be a performance-enhancing catalyst. It amps them up. But for a male with ASD, that same pressure of being watched often acts as a performance-inhibiting stressor that makes them even more rigid. Let's dig into why. So from an evolutionary psychology perspective, this makes perfect sense. There's something called young male syndrome, which is this tendency for guys to take more risks when they're being watched, to show off and boost their social status. There's even the crazy bastard hypothesis, no, I'm not making that up, where taking risks signals competence. For the extrovert, being in the spotlight brings their flexibility to the front. They're motivated to speak up, try new things, and show what they can do.
But for a male with ASD, the psychology is flipped. Social facilitation theory says that being watched enhances our dominant response. So if your baseline response to stress is to be rigid, having an audience is just going to make you more rigid. The anxiety of being observed makes you cling to what's familiar and safe. It causes perseveration, sticking to that old rule, making it even harder to adapt.
So, let's be clear.
We are not talking about small differences here. We're talking about fundamentally opposite reactions to the exact same trigger. And we can actually prove this, conceptually at least, with a classic cognitive test.
To make this crystal clear, let's run a quick thought experiment using a real-deal neuropsychological test called the Wisconsin Card Sorting Test. It's designed for one specific purpose: to measure your cognitive flexibility. Basically, how well you can roll with the punches when the rules change.
Okay, so here's the setup. You're sorting cards according to a secret rule. Let's say it's by color. You're nailing it. Then, bam, without any warning, the rule changes to shape. The outrovert, being flexible, quickly realizes the old strategy is failing and starts trying new things. That's adaptive risk-taking in action. But an individual prone to cognitive rigidity will often get stuck. They'll keep sorting by color over and over, long after it stopped working. That's perseveration.
And boom, there it is. The exact same challenge hits them, and their cognitive strategies aren't just a little different. They are polar opposites. One adapts, explores, and solves the new problem. The other gets stuck in the past. Now imagine an observer is watching them do this. It would only amplify these tendencies.
All right, section 6. Let's pull back and look at the big picture. Why is getting this right so incredibly important? Because this is about way more than just a clinical label. This is about how we understand people who just don't fit the typical mold.
See, when an observer misreads chosen independence as an inability to be flexible, it's not just a mistake. It's a betrayal of observation. It means they're ignoring the actual science that explains why that person's behavior makes perfect sense. It takes a strength, adaptive flexibility, and recasts it as a deficit.
And it all comes back to this. This is the human cost. The wrong label isn't just inaccurate, it's a profound denial of a person's lived reality. It essentially tells them that their unique way of engaging with the world is fundamentally broken. And that really leaves us with a critical question to think about. When we watch other people, how often do we rush to judge the what, the surface-level behavior, without ever stopping to ask about the why? Who else are we getting completely wrong? And what incredible strengths are we overlooking because of it?